Our last speaker today is Professor Bradley Tatar. He's an anthropologist. He will talk about how to have discussions in the online classroom. Professor Tatar, when you're ready, you can start.
Thanks for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to be asked to share my experiences in teaching online last semester, especially with such an outstanding group of scholars and educators. I'm in the School of Liberal Arts, and I teach general education courses in social and cultural anthropology, and discussion is really a key part of my classes. So in this talk, I'll describe why and how I use classroom discussion, and I'll address the challenges of adapting the classroom discussion to the online format. So for me, discussion is one of the important activities that is part of active learning, and Dr. Stephen Koslin introduced the pedagogy of active learning in the first talk in our workshop. And for me, active learning is anything that's primarily action-based, where students' learning is organized around activities and not lectures. So the idea is that you would replace lectures with actual activities and things that they do. So I tend to emphasize discussion. There's many kinds of activities that can be used in the sciences and mathematics. They tend to use problem solving, and there's many other kinds of activities that are used in active learning. Discussion itself achieves many of the goals that I try to achieve in teaching general education. So one is that as students are discussing, hearing each other's ideas and trying to express their own ideas, they start to see how concepts and different phenomena are connected to each other. They start to uncover connections during the discussion. And the professor needs to provide the scaffolding or kind of push them so that they start to take the basic concepts and assemble them into higher order ideas. So discussion is what I see as a kind of step toward bringing concepts together and seeing the larger ideas that you want students to see. So what are the formats? Well, synchronous would be the discussion that takes place, in real time, whether it's face-to-face or on the internet. Asynchronous would be something like an email discussion or posting on a bulletin board. You can also have whole class discussions with everyone participating, or you can divide the students into smaller groups called breakout groups, and this is an example of my students having a breakout group discussion. You can also use the format of a seminar or conference where students give a short presentation and then other students will respond, critique, or make comments or suggestions, and of course, as you can see in the picture, the professor can also jump in and give a on-the-spot teaching when interesting issues pop up during the presentation. So these are just some of the different formats. I usually prefer the whole class discussion, but that's only one of the formats to use. For a successful discussion, you have to make sure the students have a clear goal for the discussion. It could be building a position and supporting it with evidence, or it could be problem solving, but the students need to be oriented for what they need to achieve in the short time that they'll be doing the discussion. And to design it, the students should come into the discussion already having a clear idea of what the discussion questions are. And you do that by giving a pre-discussion task or assignment. It's often reading writing or viewing something. So they'll come in with a pretty clear set of thoughts that they're ready to express, but you're hoping in the discussion they'll expand that, and then they'll be able to bridge to the post-discussion assignments, whether it's an assessment or an essay or a project. So to bring this kind of pedagogy to the online format was a bit of a challenge. So at first I thought, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do discussions, right? But it soon became clear that we have a number of tools. So I had to choose the platform. So of course, Zoom gives you the option for this nice conference format where everyone has a camera and mic. But my fear is that with a large class having as many as 40 students per section, it would be hard for me to keep track of who participated well and who didn't. Plus, UNIST students are a little bit reluctant about speaking English into a mic, and they seem more comfortable with writing. So I ended up going with not Zoom, but Collaborate. I'm not sure if that was the right choice, but what I went with was this kind of format, which you might call it live streaming with chat room. And the reason that I chose it is because I'm familiar with this format from learning Korean. I take the Korean classes on YouTube, and so the teacher presents a lesson and the students chat freely in the chat box about the content and ask questions or make comments, and the professor reads the comments in real time and she responds to as the comments come up. So I thought this would be something that our generation of millennials are familiar with, they're comfortable with, and it would encourage them to participate. And so the results were pretty successful in the sense that I got some really good written comments. Students actually responded to each other's comments. And in the post-discussion tasks, including the essays that they wrote, the essays were some of the best essays I've seen, right? So I felt pretty satisfied, and students seemed satisfied. Nevertheless, there are some limits to that format. So for planning for next semester, I'd like to actually have more different kinds of formats, right? So some of the problems that came up with the online discussions are the same problems that you experience even in the classroom when you're doing a synchronous whole class discussion. And one is, as I said, the problem of keeping track of participation. So I'm already used to the classroom. I can notice if someone's doing their chemistry homework instead of the thing in my class. I can find that student and pull them into the discussion. I also have ways to tag the people who participate so they can get some points. But I haven't developed that kind of system yet for the online discussion. So I need to explore some technical tools for keeping track and managing who participates and who doesn't. It's also hard, even in the offline classroom, to guarantee that every student will have the possibility to participate. If you've got 40 students in a classroom, it's impossible to hear every student's opinion or comment and respond to it within the course of a 1 hour lecture. So the professor has this tendency to let the most outgoing or most outspoken students sort of take the stage, and some other students can fade into the background. So that's not really an ideal outcome for education. So we need to develop the technical tools so that everyone has the chance to participate. Another problem that is in the offline classroom is that students can't easily hear or see the other students if you have a whole class discussion. But the online format solves that problem because everyone can read what the student wrote in the chat box. Everyone can hear clearly online. So in that case, online is actually superior. But finally, of course, one of the issues is that it's hard to evaluate students' participation and actually grade it in terms of, oh, this comment was better or this student said something better than the other. So it's hard to manage and grade in a competitive way. The assignments that you give after the discussion must build on what the students learned during the discussion. So this is where it's a lot of effort for the professor because it's necessary to make sure that you don't just say, wow, that was a nice discussion, let's move on. No, you want the students to gather up the insights they gain during this discussion and then apply them in a research project or in an essay or in a presentation. So that's the challenge, is that each discussion needs suitable follow-up. So some of these strategies I'm considering are breakout groups, which you can do with Zoom, where each student is assigned to a smaller group. They have a discussion, and then they come back to the larger group and present it. Another possibility, which I know some professors use, is the asynchronous discussion, where students write a response on a bulletin board, and that's easier to grade. You can keep track of who participated, everyone can participate, and you can grade it on a rubric. So these are some of the strategies I'm considering. Our most urgent needs, I think, are we need to be trained for technical issues, or we need support, because liberal arts professors are not experts in communication technology. So we need the staff or people who can train us. And we also need training for online curriculum design, because liberal arts professors are generally not experts in pedagogy. So we need the training in how to design the curriculum that's tailored to the online context. And we also would benefit if the size of the class could be adjusted for discussion, because it's much more productive to have a discussion with 20, 25 students, which is an optimal number, rather than with 30 or 40 students. So these are our needs, and I'm certainly looking forward to the next semester. If anyone out there has any insights or suggestions to share with me, I'm open to hearing from you. So thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Tatar. And it was the last presentation. And again, he also talked about some, benefits and challenges, but especially in the liberal arts classes, like the importance of discussion in order to scaffold students, learning outcomes and knowledge, and how it's accumulated through discussions and any other ways. So in order to do that, probably, online education was not the best thing. However, somehow, he was able to do it by using chatting or still looking forward to finding other ways. And then also, we need to be trained. And I think definitely professors are not, best teachers, right? We can be good researchers, but we're not necessarily trained as teachers. So I think we still need re-education to become better teachers. Okay,